So let's start off with what exactly we have in data dictionary. We have two types of data. Actually, in fact, we'll have three types of data. So we'll discuss about the master data, transactional data. Okay. So what is master data and what is transactional data? Now, anything that will change regularly is called transactional data. Data that will not change regularly is called master data. Now let me give you an example for this. Let's say we have a school. In a school, the number of students, okay, the list of all the students, if we consider that as a master data, the attendance details happens to be transactional data. Okay, an employee details, if you take employee details as master data, then employee salary details happens to be transactional data. Now, if you in sales order also we have sales order header data. Now, what does sales order header data has? Sales order header data has the sales order number, when it was created, who created the sales order and all. Now, what does the transactional data has? Sales order item data. It will have the list of material which are been purchased, what exactly is the quantity of material, what is the cost of it. So basically we'll have these kind of records. Now if we consider a supermarket, let me consider a supermarket and take an example of that. In a supermarket, if you have a list of all the products in the supermarket happens to be a master data, who has to, who purchased how much product in what way is something which we take it as a transactional data. So these are the two different types of data that we handle. Now, whenever we are creating a database table, system will ask you whether you want it to be a master data table or a transactional data table. Accordingly, you have to build it. Now that we have done it, let us go ahead and uh, see these options in the database table level. So according to the requirement, we might create a master data table or transaction data table, but we rarely use or create organization or customizing table, because organization and customizing table actually stores configuration data. Now, what do we mean by configuration data is, for example, in your mobile, if you have changed your desktop, change your screen, okay, now that it has to display that screen or the picture on the screen, it needs to be stored somewhere. Okay, it has to be in memory. So that is something which is organization and customizing data. It's not the business data, but whatever we are doing on the SAP system, to update that, we have this. So most of the times we'll be creating master data table or transaction data table. Now let's assume that we have created one table, which is customer, also material master data. We can have it at vendor, yeah, vendor master data. So I'll create vendor master data. Vendor is someone who supplies the material for us, right? So vendor master data will create, and we'll create a vendor transaction data. So when we create two different tables, when we create these two different tables, we can join them. If you have to join any two tables, the mandatory thing is one common field is mandatory. Now when we say one common field, it need not be the field name, but what is that is mandatory is domain should be same for both the fields. If you don't have the domain same for the both the fields in the two tables, then you cannot join them. Now what do I mean by that is, for example, let's say I have taken table 1. In table 1 I have taken table 1, I have taken vendor master data, in which we have vendor number, and then we have vendor number, vendor name, vendor number, vendor name, name, create, vendor purchase order creation or whatever. Now here in table 2 also there should be vendor number, which and not just table, not just vendor number, any one field which is common. So it can have multiple fields here, and in the second table also we should have that vendor number. Okay, only then we will be able to connect, link these two tables. And the mandatory thing is both table 1 table 2 vendor number technical name might be different. It's okay, it's acceptable, but what is not acceptable is a different domain. So we need to have a same domain here. That's a mandatory thing we have. Okay, so for that we need to establish a foreign key relation. Now the first condition is domain should be same, and the second condition is we need to maintain foreign key relation. And how do we do that is what we'll see. Foreign key relation. Foreign key relation. So what are we doing here? We are creating two tables. Table 1. Let's say table 1 name is something like ZVA underscore when1. Okay, and this is ZVA underscore when2. Or we can also have this as when h header, and this is when vendor item data. So VENO vendor number, and then this is the domain that we are going to create. And data element also I'll create with the same name. It's not mandatory that we have to have a same name or different name. Anything is okay. So I'll create the data element name also see with the same name. So we'll create we'll also create a data domain and data element for vendor name as well. So this also will give it as ZVNA. Both domain and data element I'll create with the same name. Okay, and here we'll have this as, so the same domain and data element that we created here we'll be using in the second table as well. And material we'll create something like ZMAT when when MAT. So this is what we are going to create it as a domain and data element. Let's do that now. Now for that we need to select the domain first, and ZVENNO is what we have. Create. So this is the vendor number, and then we have character length as 10. Activate. Now here we have this, and then we can go ahead with the back Z vendor name. Create. This is vendor name. Now here we have data type as character, length as 20. Activate. Now once it's been done, we'll go back and create the domains for the second table as well. For second table we have just one extra when MAT material. So what are we going to store in the domain level? Domain level at this point of time, you just understand that domain is used for maintaining the data type and length. Domain is used for what? Maintaining the data type and length. Okay, now here we'll give it as character and length as something like some 15, and this I'll go for material. Save and activate this. So once it's active you can go back. Now this is the vendor. We have created all the domains that are required. Let's go ahead and create the data elements now. So data elements happens to be ZVNNO. Create. This is a vendor number, and then here we'll go for ZVNNO, and then we have to just go for the labels, field labels. 10 vendor number, 15 vendor number, now 20 vendor number, 30 vendor number. Now here we save this, activate. Now this data element, domain and data element that we are creating for vendor number can be used in both the tables. In fact, we have to use it in both the tables. Now here we have a vendor number, and then we have a vendor name. So we'll create a data element for vendor name. Here ZVE NNA, vendor name, activate. Now it's been activated. Now we'll go for ZVENMAT. So vendor material, data element. So other options which we have, data type and length, data type and structure also will create. We'll discuss that. Vendor material. Then we have here ZVEN and ZVENMAT. So we have this properties. Activate this. Now that we have done it, we can go ahead and create the database table. So I'll create the first table ZVEN ZVA underscore VNH, means vendor header. So this is a header table for vendor header, vendor data. Now here we have to give the delivery class as A. Always we'll be giving the delivery class as A, and then display and maintenance allowed. And fields, as you know, first field always we'll give it as MANDT, unless and until the client specify that it should be client independent. uh, Other than that, every time we'll be creating the first field as MANDT by default. We have vendor number ZVENNO, then vendor name ZVENNA. Now this is what we have, and save and act. No, we'll not be able to activate it because we have not maintained the technical settings, right? So in the technical settings, so technical settings, we need to show the data class. Data class, we have to give the data class. Here either we can select this table as a master data table or transaction data table, or sometimes very rarely we'll create the organizational or customizing tables. Most of the times we'll be creating master data table or transaction data table. As of now, we are selecting it as master data table, and the size category for memory space allocation we have this. So if this is a very important table in which even though the entire memory is over in the entire server, we should be able to still load some data into it, then you reserve some memory space. But the problem here is, if you reserve some memory space and don't use it, that memory will get simply wasted. So we normally do it, if it's a normal table, we'll always give it as 0, and if it has more number of records, automatically it will fetch the values from the memory from the global memory. So here we have a buffering not allowed. What exactly is buffering? Buffering is the concept of storing data temporarily in the application server. So let me show you that in the pictorial format. Now here what happens, is all the data that we are accessing, the database tables are actually stored in the database. But now if you are accessing some tables continuously from the front end, it's preferable to store a temporary copy in the buffer. So if you store some data in the temporary copy in the buffer, then that can be fetched from here. You don't have to go back to the database layer. You can just fetch it from here. Okay, this is what we have. So in that case, that is how we are going to do. So do you want the buffering to be switched on or switched off is what we need to decide right now when we are creating the database table. So when you switch on the buffering, then it allows us to make a temporary copy in the application layer, and we are going to fetch it. And what type of tables do we actually go for buffering is where the data is regularly fetched, but rarely changed. Okay, so let's say if you have say something like stock market. In stock market, every time each user will be updating the market price, so accordingly every time the data has to be fetched from database only. But when it comes to a list of all the materials in a supermarket, list of materials will not change on every minute basis. They might change every week or every month. So that can be actually buffered here and can be used on a regular basis. Okay, this is what we have. So that's a concept here. So we'll go ahead with that concept. And buffering allowed, buffering not allowed, buffering allowed but switched off, and buffering activated. Buffering allowed but switched off means you can use this, and later point of time you can switch on the buffering whenever we want. Okay, so in task oriented instruction, so reference document. Okay, so there will be three types of buffering. One is single record buffering, fully buffered, and generic buffering. So single record buffering means it's very simple. The first field will be buffered. First field in the sense, whatever is the primary key field here will be buffered. So the vendor number will be buffered. But when it comes to this one. When it comes to generic buffering will give us an option of how many fields are there. That many key fields can be accessed. For example, if the key fields are 2, it will show you 1 to 2. So let's say you have this one as also primary key. Then now in the buffering concept, it will show both. Generic buffering, in generic buffering, both will be shown here. So both in the sense, like key field 1 and key field 1 and 2, both this will be shown. So we'll go ahead and fully buffered in the sense all the fields, even if you have 100 fields, all the 100 fields will be buffered here. These are the three types of buffering that we can have here. And now in the recent past, when HANA database was introduced, after the HANA database was introduced, there are two types of storage types. One is column storage and row storage. What is column storage, what is row storage is something which I'll tell you detailedly later. Now let us go ahead and create second table here. Let's create the second table. But let me activate and update some data here. Utilities, table contents, create entries. So I'll create vendor number 100,000, 1000, sync, save it, 1001, das, save it, 1002, ready, save it. So we have created three vendors. Okay, we created three vendors here. Now these three vendors are available in the vendor header table. Now let us go ahead and create a vendor item table. Create vendor item table, in which we have application table, tailor and maintenance allowed, and field. Obviously the first field again here also have to be MNDT, VE vendor number, ZVENNO. Then we have material, ZVNMAT, save, activate this. Okay, so we need to give the data class APPL0 and size category 0. Save it. No, not APPL0. Now we'll take it as APPL1 because it's a transactional data, right? We assume that it is a transactional data, so we'll give it as APPL1. Now once we have created these two tables, we can link these two with a foreign key relation. So if you link with foreign key relation, now normally you will be able to create entries. Normally you will be able to make the entries like I'll go for 100. For 100 we don't have any data in the header table, so I'll go for material MAT1. Save it. It will be saved because we have not linked the two tables. But then if you link the two tables, only for those records for which we have the data in the header table, for that records only we'll be able to make the entries in the item table. For example, you have employee details and employee salary details. Employee salary details can be updated only when you have employee details. Without employee details we cannot assign salary details, right? So same thing here. So we'll go ahead with that. So vendor, this is the item table. In the item table we'll go ahead with we have already done with the create entries, and if you see there will be one record here. This one record is this one. Now let us go ahead with the foreign key relation between the two tables. Now as I told you, the domain should be same for both the tables. In fact, not just domain, we also have the data element also same in the both the issues. So both the things. Now you have to go to the second table, that's the item table, and click on this foreign key relation, and you need to just give the name of the first table. So first table is ZVA underscore vendor H. Okay, and then it will generate the proposal. So now here we have this generate proposal, and we already have this vendor number. It's matching, so we'll just go for copy and activate. Now once it's activated, and the foreign key relation, if you can just see the foreign key relation here, foreign key relation will be there. The foreign key relation has been established, and we will just confirm if the foreign key relation is established. If you go and try to maintain the data for values for which we don't have the data in the first table, we'll not be able to do it. Let me activate this again. It goes into inactive mode. Now here we'll go for utilities, table contents, create entries, and in this I'll go for something like uh, 101 MAT2. Now this doesn't get created. Why it doesn't get created? Because we have linked the two tables, and system checks whether do we have a value for this in the header data. So now you have a value for 1000. So for 1000, if you select, you will have material can be saved here. It's been saved successfully. 1001 also you can save, but for those records for which we don't have the value in first table, you will not be able to maintain the data in the second table. That's something which we have got from the foreign key relation here. Okay, so if you go ahead and see standard tables like VBAK and VBAP, this is already existing. VBAK happens to be sales order header data, and VBAP happens to be sales order item data. So if you can just go for SAP standard tables and check that, we'll have this foreign key relation already been established. So this is something which we already have.